Hey everyone, it's Caly. Thanks so much for being here today. I have a fun interactive card to share, and this one is going to be a pendulum card. So that mermaid tail is going to be waving back and forth, so it's super fun, and this mechanism is so easy to put together. There are lots of ways to do it, so I'm going to show you how I created this card, and it's super easy. We have the Be a Mermaid set here. It's an older set, but it's so well loved. This is my third time using it, I believe, and so I wanted to create something that was simple and easy. I know a lot of times looking at a mermaid tail, you're like, oh, I want it to be colorful, but that's going to be a lot of coloring and blending. So I'm going to show you how I make this colorful but super easy to do. What I'm going to do first is stamp all the images that I want to use, which is 2 tails and 2 wave borders, onto some white cardstock, and I'm going to emboss it in white. And this entire card is going to be ink blending and embossing. So it's super quick and easy. I love the look of watercolor and Copics, but to be honest, I get burned out with a lot of coloring sometimes because I do spend a lot of time coloring. If I were to commit to coloring these tails with Copics, I'd probably spend a good hour fussing with color combinations and making sure that I get it right. So ink blending this is just going to make it so quick and easy, and really I am less of a perfectionist when I ink blend. I feel like it's so quick in my mind that it makes it easier for me to get through. I just overthink things. So I have my mermaid tails here, and it's going to look like a hot mess at first, but I'm adding some purple. I love this taffy purple color because it's almost a pink magenta color. And so it's easy for me to blend the colors that I want. I'm going to use teal, and then I'm going to add some blues to blend into the purples. And it makes it so easy. Even though it looks like a hot mess, you're going to die cut your mermaid tails, and it's going to look gorgeous. When I'm done ink blending, I'm going to use a rag and buff off the ink off the embossed areas. And that will just remove any excess ink that's sitting on top of the embossed image. So I'll set that aside now and work on my waves. I'm adding some teal to my wave tops, and then I'll ink blend going down, adding a little bit of teal, a more green color, and then I'm going to use a wider, flatter brush. It's called the Background Blending Brush from Simon Says Stamp, and I'm going to use blue to add a soft coverage over the bottom of my little wave borders. Now to add some texture, I'm going to spray it and spritz it with a few droplets of water, and then I'll set that panel aside as well. Okay, last but not least, we're going to work on our background, and I really wanted some movement in the color. I didn't want it to be just a solid piece of ink blended panel. So I wanted to create lots of colors and texture. So I am doing big splotches of blue, but it's all going to blend out, and it's going to kind of look like clouds in the sky. And then I also wanted to make it look like a sunset. So I added some pinks and purples and some yellow just to give my panel a bit more color. Now the wave die cuts around the entire wave border, so you can do some partial die cutting in your die cutting machine just to cut off the top. I found it easier to just fussy cut those waves, so I went ahead and did that, and I also die cut my tails. And I'll clean up my background panel there by trimming off an 1/8 inch all the way around. Next, I'm just laying everything out to see how I want my layout to be before I started the mechanism for the pendulum. So I started with a little circle die that I die cut into my background where the tail ends right there in the center. And I discovered later on that I really didn't need to do this part because of how I created my mechanism. If you're going to use a ring of some sort behind this panel, then you would want to die cut a hole into it. And which I thought I was going to have to do that, but because of the way I created this card, I didn't need to do that at all. And that's because I'm going to hole punch into my acetate. So we'll see here in a little bit what I mean by that. Before I start putting my pendulum together, I'm going to go ahead and adhere this piece to a top folding card base, and that'll just secure my card, and I don't need to fuss with the bulk of my pendulum card later on when I need to attach it to a card base. So again, we didn't need to die cut a circular window into our background, but I'm going to use it as a placement so you can see things a little bit better. But what we need is some sort of anchor for our pendulum. So I'm using a little piece of foam tape that is cut out into a circle. You can buy them pre-cut this way. And if you don't have circular pieces of foam, you can use a button. You just want something small and round with some height to it. And then to make my pendulum really, really easy, what I do is I hole punched into my little 1/2 inch piece of acetate. So sizing is a huge issue. You want to make sure your button is small, your acetate is bigger than that button so that you can punch or die cut a hole that's going to be able to fit that acetate over that circular ring or button or whatever it is you're using. So now I'm going to use a washer. A lot of people like to use pennies, but I want to use a washer so I don't have money in a card. So I'm going to trim my acetate here real quick, and then we'll adhere the washer or the penny that you want to use with some double-sided adhesive to make it stay nice and strong inside your mechanism. I'm adding 2 little strips of double-sided adhesive there to account for the hole that's in my washer. And then I'll add some double-sided adhesive to the top of the mechanism as well for the image that will hang and swing from the top. So as you can see there, that pendulum swings back and forth with that weighted washer or a coin. And I think a button might even work a little bit better because there's no friction from the foam dot that I have there. So it would probably glide back and forth even better with a smooth surface of a button. Anyway, I trimmed off some of my mermaid tail there at the base, and I'm going to attach it to the top of that acetate swinging pendulum. So you can see that it swings back and forth nicely. I'm going to make sure that my top wave portion is going to be able to hide that mechanism. And then I'm going to add foam adhesive at the bottom of this so that we can adhere that first wave panel to hide this mechanism. So I'm adding my foam adhesive to the sides and bottom first. And then I'm going to swing my mermaid tail back and forth and then kind of create stoppers so that my mermaid tail doesn't spin too far left or too far right. And then I double up on the foam adhesive because I want to make sure there's plenty of room for that mechanism to glide back and forth without touching the cardstock or any of the paper underneath that would hinder that mechanism from moving back and forth freely. Then to finish this little ocean scene, I'm going to attach my second mermaid tail as well as my final wave border or layer. It just creates a little bit more dimension for that second tail. And then I'll emboss a sentiment over black cardstock using some white embossing powder. We'll die cut that because this sentiment does have a coordinating die, which I absolutely love. I'm going to add some liquid glue to that, and then I'll adhere it to this open area between the 2 waves on my card. And then I felt like it needed a little bit more sparkle. You can also add glitter on the waves. I think that would be really, really fun. I didn't think of that while I was making the card, so I looked for some sequins, and I found this Morning Glory sequin mix from Simon Says Stamp that has some pinks and some purples and coordinates perfectly with the colors that I use. So I added a few, and that finishes my pendulum card for today. I hope you liked it and are inspired to give it a try. It is super easy, and I think that anyone can find things around their house or in their stash to recreate something like this. If you're interested in the products that I used or want the color combinations for the ink blending, be sure to check out the blog post and in the descriptions below where everything will be linked for your convenience. Thanks so much for stopping by and have a great day. Bye everyone.